Hey everyone, my name's Noah from American Muscle, and today we're taking a look at the D2 Racing Pro Series lowering springs for the 2016 and newer Camaro without the 1LE package. This lowering spring kit is a very affordable setup for the Camaro owner who's looking to lower their ride and improve their car's handling capabilities. We're looking at a front and rear drop of 1.4 inches and progressive spring rates. These springs will work with factory shocks as well as a nice set of aftermarket ones. I will always recommend that for the best results, go ahead and put a new set of stock shocks on at least, if not an upgraded set. Now these springs also come as a complete set of 4 and with a limited lifetime warranty. These springs are cold wound and shot peened, which should keep them rigid and give them a long service life. They're crafted from high tensile chrome silicon steel, and to finish everything off, they're powder coated purple to keep the steel protected against corrosion. I also mentioned before that the spring rates are progressive. This means that the spring rate increases as the spring compresses. So at the bottom of the spring's travel, you get a nice refined ride quality over potholes and stuff. But then when you push it in a corner, that spring compresses to the end of its travel and the spring rate increases and gives you some good handling characteristics. It's sort of a best of both worlds, sort of dailyable design. Now, coming in at the mid 250 mark, these lowering springs from D2 are an incredibly cheap way to lower your ride height and improve handling on your Camaro. A lowering spring kit may be a cheaper option than a set of coilovers, however, they still require spring compression and are not as drop-in, plug-and-play as a set of coilovers may be. However, if you're limited by budget or just looking to keep your Camaro as close to stock as possible, a set of lowering springs are absolutely the cheapest way to achieve the look you want. Now, installing these guys on your Camaro isn't too bad for the average DIYer with some mechanical skill. We're looking at a solid 2 out of 3 wrenches of difficulty and about 3 hours of work. Now, after getting these installed, make sure you get an alignment scheduled before you drive any long distances. Now, let's head over to the shop and get these springs installed on our Camaro.
For this install, you will need air and electric impacts, a ratchet, an extension, 15mm swivel socket, 10, 13, 15, 18, 19, and 24mm sockets, 15mm ratchet wrench, 6, 18, and 21mm wrenches, a small flathead, a clip removal tool, a bungee cord, a pry bar, a spring compressor. Also not shown here is a pole jack or a jack and jack stands. What's up guys, today we're going to be doing some suspension on our Camaro, so let's get started. So our first step is going to be to remove our brake line and ABS line from the bracket that is on the strut itself. So we'll go ahead and grab our 10mm socket on our ratchet and run this 10mm bolt off. Go ahead and take that out. Make sure that is separated. Then we can go ahead and screw this right back in so we know where it's at. Then we can go ahead and pop this clip off of here for our ABS line. We'll go ahead and grab our clip removal tool and pop that off. Pop that off. Make sure that's free. Next, we can go ahead and remove our sway bar end link from our strut mount. And to do that, we'll grab an 18mm socket and extension on our impact. Go ahead and pop this off. Go ahead and pull that back out of the way. Then we'll go ahead and put that nut right back on our end link just so we don't lose track of it. Next, we can go ahead and remove the nuts from our mounting bolts here from our knuckle to our strut. So to do that, we're going to grab our 24mm socket on our impact and a 21mm wrench. We'll go ahead and run these off. So you may have to switch out to your air-powered impact, which we're doing right now. Go ahead and get these off. So now we've got the vehicle lowered down a bit, and we've got a floor jack underneath our lower control arm here, right on our lower ball joint. That's just going to help support our lower pieces of our suspension once we release this from the strut mount and everything is kind of swinging on its own. So now we'll go ahead and remove the 2 bolts holding our knuckle and our strut together. We'll kind of release the tension here. Pop these out. And once you have that out, your knuckles should swing free. Now you want to make sure your brake line and your ABS line don't get caught up on anything. And you don't just want to let this fall right out. Go ahead and grab a bungee cord or something like that. So you can hook in through here. And that's just going to prevent everything from swinging too much and putting excess tension on your lower ball joint or your brake line and ABS line. And now our strut is free, so we can go ahead and remove the upper mounting nuts and get this out. So now we can come into our engine bay here to our strut tower and remove the 3 13mm bolts holding our factory strut in place. So we'll grab our 13mm socket on our impact and go ahead and loose these up, while at the same time we're going to reach into our wheel well and support our strut so that we can grab it when it comes free. So as you remove your last one, you want to support your strut. And as that one is unbolted, we can now remove our strut from the vehicle. So now to get our strut out, what we're going to do is drop this down enough to get our top hat and top of the strut out of the wheel well. We're going to fish it out this way. Now once you have this out for this side, you can go ahead and repeat the same steps for the other side. Alrighty guys, so now that we have our strut out, we're going to need to go ahead and do some things to it because we will be swapping this factory spring out for our new setup. So while at most shops you're going to see a wall-mounted spring compressor that makes it easy for strut work and everything, a lot of you guys at home won't have access to that. So we have a handheld spring compressor here to show you can just as easily do it at home, and these are easily available to get at any local auto parts store for rental or something like that. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove our cover for our mounting nut and our stud here. So we'll grab a little flathead and we're just going to go ahead and pop this cover off so that we can access our mounting nut and stud there. And once we do that, now we can go ahead and get our clamshell locked into place. So this has 4 hooks, so we'll go right in the middle part of our spring here. Now this is a pretty tight setup, but we should be able to just relieve enough pressure to take it off of our top hat for our strut here. And now that we have that in place, we'll just go ahead and run this down by hand. It saves time on our impact. Now that we have that set, I'm going to go ahead and grab our impact with our 19mm socket on it. We're just going to apply some tension here to compress the spring enough to relieve the tension on our top hat. Now one thing you want to bear in mind while using the clamshell style is it does have a lot of pinch points, so keep your fingers clear. This back handle here is the best spot to hold on to this. So now that we have that compressed, we may need to compress it more, but we'll see where it sits once we go ahead and start trying to take this off. So now we're going to go ahead and take our 18mm socket on our impact. Go ahead and try to get this 18mm mounting nut off. We're going to apply a little bit more pressure to our spring here. So it feels like it's still got a little bit of tension. Now we'll go ahead and finish running this off. And then go ahead and remove our top hat. Then we're going to loosen up our clamshell here. After we take our retainer off, go ahead and pop that boot off with it. We'll go ahead and take our strut out. So we can go ahead and loosen up our spring tension here. And we can remove our spring from our compressor. So for the rear, we're going to need to remove this lower plastic cover here on our spring bucket / lower control arm in order to access the hardware we need to. So we've got our clip removal tool, and we're going to remove the 4 clips holding this in place first. We can just go ahead and set that aside for now. So now we have a pole jack under our lower control arm. This is going to help support our lower suspension once we remove the components when we need to. So we're going to start with our sway bar end link here. So we're going to remove this bolt using our 15 mil swivel socket and extension on our impact. And it may need to put a little bit of tension on your sway bar in order to get this bolt all the way out. Go ahead and pop that out. So next we're going to go ahead and remove our lower shock mounting bolt. So we'll grab our 18 mil socket on our impact. Go ahead and get that off. We can use our pole jack to kind of relieve the stress on here so we don't mess up our threads on the way out. Go ahead and pop that out. Alrighty guys, now that we have our shock out, it's time to go ahead and get this spring out. So what we're going to do is we have our pole jack underneath our lower control arm here, and we're going to remove this outer mounting bolt to our knuckle. So we'll grab our 15 mil socket and extension on our impact for the front side here. And then we have a 15 millimeter wrench for the nut directly on the back side. We'll go ahead and run this out. Go ahead and pop that bolt out. Then we can go ahead and lower our pole jack here. That's going to give us the clearance to remove our spring. Pull down on this. Pop our spring out of its perch here. Go ahead and remove that. We can pop our isolators out as well. So next we can go ahead and remove the upper mounting bolt for our shock and get that out of the way. So we'll grab our 15 mil ratcheting wrench and go ahead and get that off. Now these fender liners are split from the factory to allow easier access to this. Now if you do find your shock shaft to be spinning, they do make an indent on the top of your shaft, which we'll need to go ahead and use and grab that. So now we've gone ahead and put a 6 millimeter wrench on the top of our shaft here to hold that in place. Go ahead and start loosening this up. Go ahead and remove our mounting nut. Go ahead and drop our shock down. Go ahead and compress it just a little bit. You can easily do this by hand. And go ahead and remove your factory shock. So now we can go ahead and install our new spring onto our factory strut. So what we're going to do is turn this straight up and down. Now you do have a stop on the bottom here on your isolator for the bottom coil of the spring. We're going to set our new spring right back onto that. Make sure that's locked into our stop. Then we're going to reinstall our upper isolator, dust shield, and upper spacer here. Get that tucked in. Sure our spring sits on it how we want. That top coil is going to catch right there. And we can go ahead and reinstall our top hat. Now because this is a lowering spring, we won't need to compress this spring in order to get everything back on. So we'll take our factory 18 millimeter nut, get that right back onto our mounting stud. Now we'll go ahead and grab that same 18 mil socket on our impact, tighten this back down. All right. Now that that is tightened back down, last but not least, we'll reinstall our little cover here for our mounting stud. So now we're ready to get our strut back in our car. So we'll go ahead and fish our base back into its spot in between the brake line and ABS line. And we can go ahead and get our top hat lined up. So we'll go ahead and get this in position. We'll get our first factory 13 mil back in. It'll kind of help us hold this. Now that we have that started, we can line our other two up. Go ahead and get our other two in here. Then we can grab our 13 mil socket on our impact and tighten these down. All right, so now we can go ahead and grab onto our knuckle here. We'll get our bungee cord off. Go ahead and line up our knuckle back to our strut rather. We're gonna need to lower this down a little bit. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our factory mounting bolts. Get this lined up here. You may have to wiggle this back and forth a little bit to get your hardware to go through. That's completely normal. So we've got our lower one in. And we'll get our upper one in. And once we have those on, we can go ahead and reinstall our 24 millimeter nuts. So now we can go ahead and tighten everything back down with our 21 mil wrench and our 24 mil socket on our impact. So now we'll go ahead and reconnect our sway bar end link. So we've got our end link through the mounting point on our strut. Go ahead and get that 18 millimeter nut back on there. Now we can go ahead and reconnect our brake line to the bracket on our strut using that same factory 10 millimeter screw here. And we'll tighten that down with our 10 mil socket on our ratchet. And we'll go ahead and put our clip for our ABS line back in. Then once you have everything done like this for this side, you can go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. So now we're ready to go ahead and get our new rear spring installed. Now remember, we still have the factory isolator in our lower control arm here, and we're gonna go ahead and line our bottom coil up on our spring with the set point for that. Then we're gonna reuse the factory upper isolator as well. We're gonna notch that into our new spring here. Make sure that seats nice and good. We'll go ahead and get this in. Now we're just going to go ahead and pull down on our lower control arm here. Get our spring seated. And go ahead and release our control arm. That'll settle back up in position. Now we'll go ahead and use our pole jack and raise our lower control arm back up into position. Now, you may have to use a pry bar to go ahead and help you get this back all the way into position. And we can go ahead and reinstall our 18 millimeter nut on the back side here. So now we can go ahead and use our 15 mil socket on our impact and our 18 millimeter wrench. Go ahead and tighten this down. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our factory shock. So we'll go ahead and get our lower mount in, reinstall our 18 millimeter bolt here. Go ahead and get this through. Get that started. There is a welded nut on the back side of this, so you don't need a wrench. Then we'll go ahead and get our top mount through. Once again, you may need to compress your shock a bit. Go ahead and line that up. Let that slide back into place. Now sometimes that doesn't want to go through right away, so we'll go ahead and use, again, our pole jack and just give it a little assistance. Go back into place. Wiggle here. So now we'll go ahead and tighten down our bottom shock mounting bolt using our 18mm socket on our impact. Now we'll go ahead and get our sway bar end link back on with our 15mm bolt. Slide that back into place. Go ahead and get that. You want to go a good bit in by hand, just because it's very close to the lower control arm. The farther you go in first, the easier it'll be for a wrench or socket. Now we're going to go ahead and use a 15mm ratcheting wrench to tighten this back down. Now we can go ahead and get our plastic cover for our lower control arm back into place. Put our clips back in. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our 15mm mounting nut for our shock. Then we'll go ahead and grab our 15mm ratcheting wrench. Again, tightening this down. Now if your shaft starts to spin, again, you can always grab that 6mm wrench, hook it onto the top of your stud here. Now once you have this done for this side, you can go ahead and repeat these same steps for the other side.
Those were the D2 Racing Pro Series lowering springs for the 2016 and newer Camaro without the 1LE package. Remember, for all things Camaro, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.